When you eat your meal with Omad makes all the difference in the world. One meal a day is literally one meal. So when you eat that meal, that is the biggest lever that you can pull. Okay, we talk about on this channel, circadian rhythms, environmental cues, when you time your food aligned with when it's light out, when it's dark, it makes such a big difference. And one of the things that I am such a proponent of is stacking most of your calories earlier in the day and slowly tapering them off as the day goes on, because most storage genes are aligned with us in the morning. We can get away with eating more in the morning and actually use it as fuel. Anyhow, I digress, but I wanted to outline a pretty prominent study, one of the only studies surrounding the world of one meal a day, and I want to outline why it showed some flaws with Omad. I'm not an Omad fan, but I still feel that it's my duty to outline this for people that do Omad. So let's break it down. So this study was published in the journal Metabolism, and it was what is called a crossover study. Crossover studies are my personal favorite because they get rid of a lot of the biases with controls. So what that means is they had two groups, in this case 21 individuals. One group did Omad. Okay, they ate one meal a day for 8 weeks. The other group ate 3 meals per day for 8 weeks. Then they crossed over, hence the term crossover study. They crossed over. The Omad group did 3 meals a day, vice versa. Okay, so the data is very solid, even though it's not the biggest study in the world, right? Well, when you look at the data, the results were fascinating. Omad led to a larger fat loss. In fact, 2 kilograms on average fat was lost in the Omad group, whereas the 3 meals a day group, no weight loss. Okay, well that's kind of interesting. The design wasn't even set up to be caloric restriction. It was set up to be relative maintenance, maybe a little bit less. The Omad group lost fat. The non-Omad group did not. Pretty fascinating and kind of interesting because it somewhat debunks that calories in, calories out is the only thing you need to pay attention to. I'm not a crazy person. I know that it matters. Let me make that very clear. Calories in, calories out do matter, but there absolutely are other factors at play that trigger different metabolic environment, if you want to call it that. But okay, at first it sounds like this study is all in favor of Omad, and really it kind of was. But when you look at the data, it showed that the metabolic markers were quite bad. Fasting glucose was elevated, insulin was elevated. It really just was wrecking metabolic markers. Now, I have some reasons behind outside of the basic stuff. I'm not a fan of trying to stack all your calories with one meal. Okay, there's something that you can trigger called metabolic gridlock. Your mitochondria do not like to try to process fats and carbs at the same time. They operate well on one or the other. So when you're loading a bunch of stuff, yeah, there could be a metabolic sort of inflammatory response that happens, but that wasn't even addressed in this particular study, but it's something that I feel like I do want to mention. Okay, the biggest issue with this study was when they had the people eat. Now let me ask you a question. You can put it down in the comment section because I'm curious. If you do one meal a day, what time of day do you eat? Most people do eat in the evening time because it makes the most sense along with your family. I'm gonna do Omad where I just fast all day and then I sit down and I have dinner with my family. It makes sense from an ease perspective, but I think that you're doing yourself damage over the long haul. And that's exactly what's wrong with this study. This study showed that people were eating between 5 and 9 p.m. Can you imagine stacking 2,300 calories between 5 and 9 p.m. when it's dark out, when your body is trying to shut down for the day? All environmental cues are telling you to not eat right now and actually turn things off. I tell most people to stop eating after 7 to help them sleep, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so what I would suggest is that you break your Omad fast in the ballpark of 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., 3 p.m.-ish, in the middle of the day, right smack in the middle of daylight hours, so environmental cues are aligned. Okay, now say what you want about Omad, I say what I want about Omad, that is the best time to do it. Okay, but Thomas, you say eat in the morning otherwise, consolidate most of your calories to the morning if you're not fasting. Well, wouldn't it make sense to eat just a big breakfast with Omad? Unfortunately, there's no human studies to look at that, but there are rodent studies, and I've talked about this in another video, but let's break it down. This mice study took a look at mice that consumed one meal a day in the morning versus mice that evenly split their meals twice per day, or 2 times per day, right? 2 meals. Well, they found that in this case, the Omad mice, they ate the same amount of calories. The Omad mice gained weight had high levels of insulin, high levels of fasting glucose, but even worse, they messed up gene expression associated with beta oxidation. They messed up how their body could utilize fat as a fuel source. They messed that up, and they also messed up genes associated with the circadian rhythm. So it seemed like, even, in the case of Omad, somewhat of a potential anomaly where eating it all in the morning is actually not that good. And maybe it has something to do with the fact that cortisol levels are high in the morning. There could be a number of confounding factors that we can look at there, but it looks like the best time of day to eat with Omad is right smack in the middle of the day. And it's just a little bit cumbersome and in the way, but I also will note that probably shouldn't do Omad more than 3 or 4 days per week. Okay, so it really should be like Omad 4 week. I mean, it's like you don't want to do it literally every single day because you need to give yourself a chance to actually recover from that and give your body an opportunity to rejuvenate a little bit. So when you look at this data, eating right smack in the middle of the day is probably your best bet. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel, and I'll see you tomorrow.